My name is Helena Thompson, 32 years old, and I'm the wife of Ethan Thompson, the chief financial officer at one of the city's top advertising agencies. Tonight, I'm standing in a luxurious hotel ballroom at my husband's annual Christmas party, feeling oddly out of place despite my designer dress. 8 years of marriage, and lately, something feels different. Ethan has been coming home later, showing less affection. His new assistant, Samantha, keeps glancing my way. Before I continue this life-changing story, let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button so you won't miss the valuable lessons from this painful journey. The reflection staring back at me from the hotel bathroom mirror showed a woman trying to maintain her composure. I adjusted my emerald green dress, a Christmas gift from Ethan last year, when things were still good between us. I applied another coat of lipstick, hoping to recapture some of the confidence I felt slipping away with each passing minute at this party. 8 years ago, Ethan and I met at Northwestern University. I was studying psychology while he pursued his finance degree. We were the couple everyone envied. The ambitious finance major and the compassionate psychology student perfectly complementing each other. Our wedding 3 years later was everything I had dreamed of growing up in suburban Chicago. 200 guests, a stunning venue overlooking Lake Michigan, and promises of forever that I truly believed. After graduation, I established my private practice as a psychological consultant while supporting Ethan as he climbed the corporate ladder at Maxwell Advertising. I remembered how proud I felt when he was promoted to CFO 2 years ago. We celebrated with champagne on our back deck, planning a future that seemed secure and bright. Our Tudor-style home in the prestigious Lakewood neighborhood became our sanctuary. 4 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen where we cooked together on Sunday mornings, and a beautiful garden I tended myself. We took romantic getaways to Napa Valley, the Bahamas, and Paris. Last year, we started discussing having children, even converting one of the spare rooms into a potential nursery. Maxwell Advertising had become Ethan's second home. With over 500 employees and major accounts with Fortune 500 companies, it was a powerhouse in the industry. As CFO, Ethan managed all financial aspects of the business from budgeting to investment strategies. His ambition was clear. He wanted the CEO position within the next 5 years, and I supported that dream wholeheartedly. The first signs of change were subtle. Ethan started coming home past 8, sometimes 9 in the evening. Our tradition of Friday date nights dwindled from every week to once a month. When I reached for his phone to order takeout one evening, he snatched it away with surprising speed. His passwords changed. His affection waned. Then Samantha arrived. 6 months ago, Maxwell Advertising hired her as Ethan's executive assistant. Young, ambitious, with a business degree from Yale and striking good looks. I first met her at the company's summer picnic. She greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, her handshake firm and confident. "So nice to finally meet you, Helena. Ethan talks about you all the time," she said, though something in her tone suggested otherwise. Throughout that afternoon, I noticed how she seemed to appear wherever Ethan was laughing at his jokes, touching his arm when speaking to him. I dismissed my unease as petty jealousy unbecoming of a woman who counseled others on trust and communication. At subsequent company events, Samantha was always present, always perfectly dressed, always finding reasons to pull Ethan away for urgent work matters. I expressed my concerns to Ethan once only to be told I was being ridiculous. "She's my assistant, Helena. We work closely together. That's all," he said dismissively. Looking at myself in the bathroom mirror now, I couldn't ignore the growing pit in my stomach. Tonight was the Christmas party, an event I usually enjoyed. I had spent hours preparing, hoping this evening might help bridge the distance growing between us. The red sole Louboutins, the emerald dress that matched my eyes, the diamond earrings Ethan had given me for our 5th anniversary. I wanted tonight to remind him of us, of what we had built together. With a deep breath, I stepped out of the bathroom and back into the crowded ballroom. The company had spared no expense. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, a live band played holiday classics, and ice sculptures adorned the buffet tables. Normally, I would have appreciated such elegance, but tonight it felt hollow. I scanned the room for my husband, hoping to recapture some of the magic we once had. Perhaps a dance, a genuine conversation, anything to feel connected again. As I walked through the crowd, colleagues greeted me warmly. I was, after all, the CFO's wife, but beneath their smiles, I sensed pity. Did they know something I didn't? Across the room, I spotted Ethan in his tailored suit laughing with a group of executives. By his side, predictably stood Samantha in a form-fitting black dress. As I approached, I tried to quiet the voice inside, warning me that tonight something would change forever. The Christmas party sparkled with holiday cheer that felt increasingly artificial as the night progressed. The grand ballroom of the Langham Hotel was transformed into a winter wonderland, with silver and blue decorations, ice sculptures, and twinkling lights. Employees from all departments mingled, enjoying the open bar and gourmet buffet, celebrating another successful year at Maxwell Advertising. I moved through the crowd smiling and making small talk with people who knew my name, but not much else about me. 8 years of attending company functions had taught me how to play the role of the supportive wife, even when I felt like an outsider. "Helena, you look stunning tonight," called Jessica from the creative department. She air-kissed both my cheeks. "That dress is absolutely gorgeous on you." "Thank you," I replied, scanning the room for Ethan. "Have you seen my husband?" Jessica's smile faltered slightly. "I think I saw him near the bar with Samantha. They're probably discussing the Anderson account. You know how those two are always working." The way she emphasized working made my stomach clench. I thanked her and moved toward the bar, weaving between groups of laughing colleagues, the holiday music suddenly grating to my ears. Sure enough, there they were. Ethan stood unnecessarily close to Samantha, their heads bent together over her smartphone. His hand rested casually on the small of her back, in a gesture that seemed far too intimate for a professional relationship. I watched as she laughed at something he said, touching his arm and leaning even closer. I approached them, plastering on my most convincing smile. "There you are. I've been looking all over for you." Ethan straightened immediately, his hand dropping from Samantha's back. "Helena, sorry, we were just going over some numbers for the quarterly report." Samantha smiled at me, all perfect teeth and calculated warmth. "Helena, so good to see you again. That dress is beautiful." "Thank you, Samantha. You look lovely as well." I turned to Ethan. "The band is playing our song. Would you like to dance?" His discomfort was palpable. "Actually, we really need to finish discussing these projections. Maybe later." Before I could respond, Samantha chimed in. "Go dance with your wife, Ethan. The numbers can wait until Monday." He hesitated, clearly annoyed at being put on the spot. "Fine, one dance." As he reluctantly led me to the dance floor, I couldn't help but notice Samantha's eyes following us, her expression unreadable. The dance was stiff and awkward. Ethan held me at a distance, his mind clearly elsewhere. When the song ended, he quickly excused himself, claiming he needed to speak with the CEO about something urgent. I retreated to a quiet corner of the ballroom, nursing a glass of champagne. From my vantage point, I watched as Ethan rejoined Samantha. Within minutes, they were dancing together, laughing and moving with an ease that Ethan hadn't shown with me. "They make quite the pair, don't they?" A woman's voice startled me from my observations. I turned to find Diane, the head of human resources, standing beside me. "They're just colleagues," I said automatically. Diane gave me a sympathetic look. "Of course they are, dear." She sipped her wine. "Though I've been in HR for 20 years and I know when there's more happening than just work discussions." My heart raced. "What exactly are you implying?" She patted my arm. "Nothing specific. Just that you might want to keep your eyes open. Late-night meetings, business trips together, texts at all hours. You know how these things start. Before I could press her further, she was called away by another colleague. I stood frozen, her words confirming my worst fears. When I looked for Ethan again, I spotted him heading to the bar. He set his phone down to sign the receipt for his drink. Seizing the opportunity, I casually walked over and picked it up, pretending to move it to safety. "You left this on the edge," I said when he turned around. "Thanks," he replied, reaching for it. But not before a notification flashed across the screen. A text from Samantha. "Meet me in the Orchid Room in 10. Brought the files. No one will miss us." Ethan snatched the phone from my hand, a flash of anger and panic crossing his face. "Were you reading my messages?" "It popped up, Ethan. I couldn't help but see it." I stared at him, giving him a chance to explain. "It's work, Helena. The Anderson account is in crisis, and we need to review some confidential documents." "On Christmas Eve at the company party." My voice rose slightly, drawing glances from nearby guests. "Lower your voice," he hissed. "Yes, on Christmas Eve. That's the job, Helena. You know that." I excused myself to find the ladies' room, needing a moment alone to process what was happening. The elegant bathroom was empty, except for two women at the sinks, deep in conversation. I entered a stall, not intending to eavesdrop until I heard Samantha's name. "She's got her claws in him good," one woman said. "Poor Helena has no idea." "You think they're actually sleeping together?" asked the other. "Please, they've been disappearing together for urgent meetings for months. Last week, they were both mysteriously out sick on the same day. And have you seen how he looks at her? His wife is here tonight. Do you think she suspects? If she doesn't, she's the only one in the company who's clueless." The women left, their voices fading, unaware that I was there hearing every word. My hands trembled as I exited the stall. I splashed cold water on my face, careful not to ruin my makeup, though it hardly seemed important now. When I returned to the ballroom, my eyes immediately sought out Ethan. Panic rose in my throat when I couldn't find him anywhere. I scanned the crowd twice before spotting him and Samantha near the exit. They weren't even trying to be discreet anymore. His hand held hers as they slipped out of the ballroom together, heading toward the elevator. My world tilted on its axis as I watched my husband leave hand in hand with his assistant. The betrayal was no longer a suspicion, but a reality unfolding before my eyes. My heart hammered against my ribs as I watched the elevator doors close with Ethan and Samantha inside. For a moment, I stood frozen in shock, the noise of the party fading to a distant buzz in my ears. Then, propelled by a surge of adrenaline and fury, I moved toward the stairwell. The hotel had 12 floors. I had no idea which one they were heading to, but I remembered Ethan mentioning the company had booked several meeting rooms for the event. These would likely be on the conference level somewhere around the 3rd or 4th floor. I pushed through the stairwell door, kicking off my heels to move faster up the steps. Each footfall echoed my racing thoughts. 8 years of marriage, 8 years of supporting his career, of building a life together, of believing in us. Had it all been a lie? How long had this been going on? The 3rd floor was quiet when I emerged from the stairwell, slightly breathless. A long hallway stretched before me, lined with closed doors. I slipped my shoes back on and moved silently, listening for voices checking door placards. Magnolia Suite, Azalea Room, each empty or occupied by strangers who gave me curious glances as I peered inside. My phone buzzed in my clutch. A text from Melissa, a colleague's wife I'd befriended at previous events. "Where did you go? Everything okay?" I ignored it, continuing my search. The 4th floor yielded similar results. Empty conference rooms, a few hotel staff preparing for tomorrow's events, but no sign of Ethan or Samantha. Doubt began to creep in. Maybe I'd misinterpreted. Maybe they really were discussing work. Then I remembered the text. The orchid room. I hadn't seen it on either of these floors. I approached a young man in hotel uniform who was arranging chairs in a small meeting room. "Excuse me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Could you tell me where the orchid room is?" He looked up, surprised to see a woman in evening wear in this part of the hotel. "The orchid room is on the executive level, ma'am, 7th floor. It's part of the VIP suite reserved for board members and special guests." "Thank you." I managed, already moving back toward the stairs. The 7th floor had a different feel entirely. Plush carpeting muffled my footsteps. The lighting was softer, more intimate. A small sign indicated the direction of the orchid room. As I followed it, I felt like I was walking toward my own execution, each step bringing me closer to a truth I wasn't sure I was ready to face. At the end of a short corridor stood a mahogany door with a small brass plaque, "Orchid Room." I paused outside, straining to hear. Sure enough, voices drifted through the thick wood. Ethan's deep tones followed by Samantha's light laughter. My stomach clenched painfully. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a series of notifications. I glanced down and froze. Someone had accidentally included me in a reply all email chain between Ethan and Samantha. The subject line read, "Weekend plans, Deck 1719. This weekend." When Ethan had told me he was going to visit his brother in Milwaukee. With trembling fingers, I opened the email. Their exchange was brief but unmistakable. E. Booked the cabin in Lake Geneva. Arrive Friday afternoon. Bringing the Anderson files as cover but planning to leave them in the car. S. Perfect. I'll bring the champagne. Can't wait to get you alone without interruptions for once. This weekend is just the beginning. Once things settle with the Q4 reports, we'll figure out a more permanent arrangement. The implication was clear. This wasn't just a physical affair. They were making future plans. A more permanent arrangement. The words swam before my eyes. I checked the timestamps on their previous messages. This had been going on for months, right under my nose. All those late nights at the office, the business trips, the sudden interest in weekend golf with clients. Lies, all of it. Standing outside that door, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, a gaping wound in my chest, but alongside it rose something else. Anger. No rage. Pure, clarifying rage that burned away the shock and confusion. I didn't knock. I didn't announce myself. I simply pushed open the door to the orchid room, determined to confront whatever waited on the other side. The heavy door swung open silently, revealing a scene that burned itself permanently into my memory. The orchid room was an elegantly appointed space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city's glittering skyline. A crystal chandelier cast soft light over a polished conference table, but Ethan and Samantha weren't seated at it. They sprang apart as the door opened, but not quickly enough. Ethan's hand had been caressing Samantha's face, their bodies pressed close together. More damning than their physical proximity were the documents spread across the table. Financial statements, spreadsheets, and what looked like bank transfer records. "Helena." Ethan's voice was a strangled mix of shock and anger. "What the hell are you doing here?" Samantha stepped back, smoothing her dress with trembling hands. Her lipstick was smudged, her expression flickering between embarrassment and defiance. "I could ask you the same thing," I replied, my voice eerily calm despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. "Urgent work meeting, was it?" Ethan moved in front of the table, blocking my view of the documents. "This isn't what it looks like." "Really, because it looks like you're having an affair with your assistant." I stepped further into the room, letting the door close behind me. "And it looks like you're reviewing financial documents that shouldn't be out at a Christmas party." "We're preparing for the year-end presentation." Samantha interjected, her composure returning. "Mr. Thompson wanted to review some figures before Monday's board meeting." "Mr. Thompson?" I laughed bitterly. That's funny, considering you just had your tongue down his throat. Ethan's face darkened. That's enough, Helena. You're making a scene over nothing. Samantha and I work closely together. Yes, there was a moment of indiscretion just now, but it was a mistake. Too much champagne, the stress of the holidays. Stop lying to me. My voice rose sharply. I saw the texts, Ethan. I saw the emails about your weekend getaway to Lake Geneva. This isn't a momentary indiscretion. This is an affair. Samantha began gathering the papers on the table, shoving them into a leather portfolio. The movement drew my attention, and I caught glimpses of what appeared to be duplicate sets of financial reports with different figures. What are those documents? I asked, moving toward the table. Ethan stepped into my path. Company confidential. Nothing that concerns you. But I'd seen enough in that brief glance to recognize inconsistencies. As the wife of a CFO, I'd picked up more than a passing knowledge of financial statements over the years. There had been 2 sets of numbers for the same reporting period, one significantly different from the other. Are you cooking the books? The question left my mouth before I could fully process the implication. The color drained from Ethan's face. You don't know what you're talking about. Samantha had stopped gathering papers, her eyes darting nervously between us. I think I do. I continued, the pieces suddenly falling into place. 2 sets of books. One for the board and shareholders, one for... What? Where is that money going, Ethan? Get out, Helena. His voice was low, dangerous. Go back to the party and forget what you think you saw. Instead, I lunged for the table, grabbing a handful of documents before either of them could react. Quarterly financial reports with different revenue figures, bank statements for accounts I'd never seen before, transfer authorizations with Ethan's signature. Samantha moved to snatch the papers back, but I stepped away, scanning them quickly. Offshore accounts, inflated revenue projections. What are you doing, Ethan? His expression shifted from anger to something more calculated. Put those down, Helena. You're drunk and emotional. No one will believe anything you say about those documents. They will when I show them the actual papers, I replied, clutching them tightly. And risk me losing my job, our lifestyle. Everything we've built. He laughed coldly. You wouldn't. You risked all that when you started sleeping with her. I nodded toward Samantha, who had gone very still. And apparently, when you started committing fraud. Ethan took a step toward me, his hands clenched into fists. Give me those papers. Or, what you'll hit me, add assault to adultery and fraud. This is bigger than you understand. Samantha suddenly spoke up. The company needed to show growth this quarter to secure the merger with Global Tech. We just adjusted some projections temporarily. Shut up, Samantha, Ethan snapped, but she continued, seemingly desperate to justify their actions. Once the merger goes through, the real numbers won't matter. Maxwell will be absorbed into Global Tech, and the discrepancies will disappear in the consolidation. I stared at them both, these strangers, wearing the faces of people I thought I knew. So you're defrauding not just the company, but also Global Tech, making them pay inflated prices based on fake numbers. It's business, Ethan said dismissively. Everyone does it. No, everyone doesn't commit financial fraud. I took out my phone and quickly photographed several of the most damning documents. I'm leaving now. Don't try to stop me. Ethan's face contorted with rage. If you breathe a word of this to anyone, I'll destroy you in the divorce. You'll get nothing. I'll make sure of it. I looked at my husband of 8 years, the man I had loved and supported, now transformed into someone I didn't recognize. You already took everything that mattered when you betrayed our marriage. There's nothing left for you to take. With that, I walked out, still clutching the incriminating papers. In the elevator down to the lobby, I leaned against the wall, my legs suddenly weak. Rain had started outside, pattering against the glass walls of the elevator. By the time I reached my car in the parking garage, I was shaking uncontrollably, tears mingling with raindrops on my face. As I drove home through the stormy night, I realized there was no going back. The life I had known was overshadowed by what I had discovered behind that door. But along with the devastation came a strange sense of clarity. For the first time in months, I knew exactly what I needed to do next. The drive home passed in a blur of streetlights and windshield wipers fighting against the December rain. I parked in our driveway, staring at the house Ethan and I had chosen together now, just an elaborate stage set for a marriage that had been hollowing out from the inside. Inside, I kicked off my heels in the entryway and spread the stolen documents across our dining room table. The house was quiet, except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway, a wedding gift from Ethan's parents. I made myself a strong cup of coffee and settled in for a long night. My psychology degree hadn't prepared me for forensic accounting, but I'd picked up enough from Ethan over the years to recognize serious irregularities. 2 different quarterly reports with the same dates but different numbers. Revenue inflated by nearly 30%, expenses mysteriously reduced, and most damning of all, records of transfers to accounts in the Cayman Islands. I photographed everything with my phone, creating a digital backup. Then I called Karen, my closest friend since college, and now a corporate attorney. Despite the late hour, she answered on the 3rd ring. "Helena, is everything okay?" "No," I admitted, my voice cracking. "Everything is very much not okay. I need your help, but I can't talk about it over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow?" "Of course. My office at 9. "Perfect. And Karen, don't tell anyone we're meeting." I ended the call just as headlights swept across the living room windows. Ethan was home. I quickly gathered the documents and hid them in my home office inside a psychology textbook from graduate school that I knew he'd never open. When he walked in, his expression was a carefully composed mask of contrition. "Helena, we need to talk about what happened." I crossed my arms, keeping the kitchen island between us. "Which part? The affair or the fraud?" "Lower your voice," he hissed, glancing around as if the walls might be listening. "What you saw wasn't fraud. It's standard accounting practices during merger negotiations." "Don't insult my intelligence, Ethan. I saw the documents." "Documents you stole," he countered. "If you're thinking of doing something stupid, remember that you committed theft tonight. Corporate espionage." "Is that the angle you're going with, threatening me?" His demeanor suddenly shifted, softening. He ran a hand through his hair, looking exhausted. "No, I'm sorry. This isn't how I wanted to have this conversation." He approached slowly, like I was a frightened animal. "Helena, we've been growing apart for a long time. You must have felt it too. Don't you dare try to justify your affair by pretending our marriage was already over." "It wasn't an affair, not really. Samantha and I... It just happened. A moment of weakness. A moment..." I laughed bitterly. "You've been planning a weekend getaway. You've been lying to me for months." He winced. "Okay, yes, things developed between us. I was going to tell you after the holidays. I didn't want to ruin Christmas for you." "How considerate." The sarcasm dripped from my voice. "And the financial documents, were you going to tell me about those too?" His eyes hardened. "That's business, Helena. It has nothing to do with us." "It has everything to do with us when my husband is committing crimes that could send him to prison." "Keep your voice down," he snapped, suddenly looming over me. "No one's going to prison. Those documents don't exist, do you understand me? If you breathe a word about them to anyone, we'll both lose everything. This house, our savings, your practice that I helped finance. All gone." The threat hung in the air between us. I'd never seen this side of Ethan before, cold and calculating, but I realized it had always been there, hidden beneath the charm. "I'm going to bed," I said finally. "I'll sleep in the guest room." "Helena, don't. Just don't." As I climbed the stairs, I heard him pour himself a drink in the kitchen. I locked the guest room door behind me, my mind racing. I couldn't confront him directly. He was too powerful, too connected. I needed a different approach. The next morning, I rose early, dressed in my most professional outfit, and left before Ethan woke up. At Karen's office, I laid out everything I'd discovered. As she reviewed the documents, her expression grew increasingly grave. "Helena, this is serious. Securities fraud, wire fraud, potentially money laundering. The SEC would have a field day with this. What should I do?" "First, protect yourself. Open a new bank account he doesn't know about. Move some money there. Get copies of all your financial records." She helped me draft a plan. I would need to gather more evidence, build a stronger case, and I would need to be careful. Very careful. Over the next week, I performed the most challenging acting role of my life. I pretended to believe Ethan's lies about ending things with Samantha. I feigned acceptance when he claimed the financial documents were just aggressive accounting that I didn't understand. I even forced myself to share a bed with him again, though I recoiled at his touch. Meanwhile, I was setting up my counter moves. I installed a small camera in our home office hidden inside a desk plant. One night, when Ethan worked late, I recorded him accessing our home safe, removing more financial documents, and making late-night calls to Samantha about securing the accounts. I also reached out to Amanda Peterson, a quiet, efficient accountant at Maxwell who had always been friendly to me at company events. We met at a coffee shop 20 miles from the city where no one would recognize us. "I appreciate you meeting me, Amanda," I began, keeping my voice low despite the Christmas music playing overhead. "I needed to talk to someone who understands the company's finances." She stirred her latte nervously. "What's this about Helena?" I took a deep breath. "Have you noticed any irregularities in the quarterly reports? Anything that didn't add up?" Her eyes widened, then darted around the coffee shop. "Why are you asking me this?" "I can't explain everything right now, but I think something's happening with the company's finances. Something that could hurt a lot of people when the global tech merger goes through." Amanda was silent for a long moment, weighing her response. Finally, she leaned forward. "The revenue projections for Q3 and Q4 seemed optimistic. When I asked for supporting documentation, I was taken off those accounts, reassigned to smaller clients." "By whom?" "Your husband and his assistant." I nodded slowly. "Would you be willing to help me look into this further?" Discreetly. She hesitated, then straightened her shoulders. "My father lost his retirement when Enron collapsed. I won't be part of something like that. What do you need?" With Amanda's help, I began piecing together a more complete picture of what Ethan and Samantha were doing. The fraud was extensive, dating back at least 6 months, coinciding with the beginning of their affair. They had created elaborate fake projections to inflate the company's value ahead of the merger, while simultaneously siphoning real profits into offshore accounts. At home, I maintained the pretense of reconciliation. Ethan seemed to believe I had accepted his explanations, perhaps thinking that fear of losing our lifestyle had won out over my principles. He grew comfortable again, less guarded. A fatal mistake. On Christmas morning, he gave me a diamond bracelet, kissing me as if nothing had changed. I gave him a silk tie, smiling through my revulsion. Later that day, as he napped on the couch, I accessed his laptop using the password I'd watched him enter the day before. I forwarded key emails to myself, then carefully deleted them from his sent folder. The pieces were falling into place. With each passing day, my resolve strengthened. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore, but for everyone who would be hurt by Ethan's schemes. The employees who might lose their jobs when the fraud was discovered. The shareholders who would see their investments evaporate. As December turned to January, I finalized my plan. I would need to time everything perfectly. One wrong move, and Ethan would destroy all the evidence. I scheduled a meeting with Maxwell's board of directors requesting to address them about a sensitive personal matter at their next session. To my surprise, they agreed to hear me out. The night before the board meeting, Ethan noticed my distraction during dinner. "Is everything okay? You seem tense." I forced a smile. "Just a difficult case with a client, nothing to worry about." He reached across the table, taking my hand. "I'm glad we're getting past all that ugliness from the Christmas party. I know we can make this work, Helena." I squeezed his hand, wondering if he could feel my pulse racing with anticipation and fear. "Me too. Everything will be different after tomorrow." On that, at least, we could agree. The Maxwell Advertising headquarters occupied the top 10 floors of a gleaming skyscraper downtown. I'd visited many times for company functions, but never with the purpose I carried today. Dressed in a conservative navy suit, hair pulled back in a neat bun, I looked every inch the professional as I rode the elevator to the executive floor. The receptionist greeted me warmly. "Mrs. Thompson, the board is expecting you. They're just finishing up some preliminary business." "Thank you, Claire. Is my husband in there?" I kept my voice casual, though my heart was racing. "Yes, all the executive team members are present for today's meeting." "Perfect." I checked my watch. Amanda should be in position by now, ready with her part of the evidence. I'd also arranged for Karen to be on standby, though she wouldn't attend unless necessary. 20 minutes later, the boardroom doors opened, and Claire escorted me in. The long mahogany table was surrounded by 12 people, most of whom I recognized from various company events. At the head sat Gerald Maxwell, the 70-year-old founder and chairman. Ethan was seated halfway down the table, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm when he saw me. Samantha sat nearby, taking notes on her tablet, her perfectly manicured nails tapping nervously when our eyes met. "Mrs. Thompson," Gerald greeted me, rising slightly from his chair. "The board has granted you 15 minutes as requested. The floor is yours." "Thank you, Mr. Maxwell board members." I set my briefcase on the table, maintaining my composure despite Ethan's glare. "I appreciate your time today. What I'm about to share is difficult but necessary for the future of Maxwell Advertising." I removed a folder from my briefcase. "I've discovered evidence of serious financial irregularities within the company, specifically related to the upcoming merger with Global Tech." A murmur ran through the room. Ethan half rose from his chair. "Mr. Chairman, my wife is going through some personal issues. This is completely inappropriate." Gerald raised a hand, silencing him. "Let Mrs. Thompson speak." "Thank you." I distributed copies of key documents to each board member. What you're looking at are two different versions of the same quarterly reports. One shows the actual financial position of Maxwell Advertising. The other, the version presented to Global Tech and your shareholders, shows revenues inflated by 30% and liabilities reduced by nearly half. The board members flipped through the pages, expressions ranging from confusion to growing concern. "These are internal documents," sputtered Harold Jenkins, the head of legal. "How did you obtain these?" "That's irrelevant," I replied calmly. "What matters is their content, which can be verified independently." Ethan's face had gone pale. "This is absurd. These documents are fake." "Are they?" I turned to Gerald. "Mr. Maxwell, I've also discovered evidence of funds being transferred to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands." I slid another set of papers across the table. "These transfers bear my husband's signature and were executed over the past 6 months." Samantha had stopped taking notes, her tablet forgotten, as she stared at me with undisguised hatred. "This is a personal vendetta," Ethan declared, looking around the table desperately. "Helena and I are having marital problems. She's trying to destroy my career out of spite." "Is that why your assistant is looking so nervous right now?" I asked, turning to Samantha. "Perhaps she's concerned about what else I might know, like the fact that she's been helping falsify these reports while carrying on an affair with my husband." Gasps and uncomfortable glances spread around the table. Office affairs were one thing, financial fraud another entirely. "These are serious allegations, Mrs. Thompson," Gerald said gravely. "Do you have any corroboration?" As if on cue, the boardroom door opened and Amanda Peterson entered carrying her own set of files. "I believe I can help with that, sir." "Ms. Peterson, what is the meaning of this?" Gerald asked, clearly surprised by the accountant's appearance. "I've been tracking discrepancies in our financial reporting for the past 3 months." Amanda explained, her voice steady despite her obvious nervousness. "After being removed from the Global Tech accounts, I continued to monitor the numbers. What Mrs. Thompson is saying is true." Chaos erupted in the boardroom. Ethan jumped to his feet, pointing at Amanda. "She's lying. She's just a junior accountant who's bitter about being passed over for promotion. A junior accountant who has copies of the original data before it was altered," Amanda replied, distributing her own documents. "I kept backups of everything." Gerald Maxwell studied the papers before him, his expression darkening. After a tense silence, he looked up at Ethan. "Is there any truth to these allegations, Mr. Thompson?" Ethan straightened his tie, visibly struggling to maintain his composure. "Sir, these numbers were adjusted based on projected growth related to the merger. It's standard accounting practice during negotiations. As for the offshore accounts, they're investment vehicles for the company's excess capital, completely legitimate. Then you won't mind if we bring in an independent auditor to verify everything immediately," I suggested. "I think that would be wise," Gerald agreed, his voice ice cold. "In the meantime, Mr. Thompson and Ms. Reynolds are suspended pending investigation. Security will escort you both from the building after you surrender your company devices and access cards." "You can't do this," Samantha finally spoke, her composed facade cracking. "We did everything for this company. The merger wouldn't have happened without us making the numbers work." Her outburst was damning. Several board members exchanged alarmed glances. Ethan grabbed her arm. "Shut up, Samantha." But the damage was done. Gerald nodded to his assistant, who left the room, briefly returning with 2 security officers. "Please escort Mr. Thompson and Ms. Reynolds to clear out their personal belongings," Gerald instructed. "They are to be supervised at all times and are not to access any company systems." As security approached, Ethan's eyes locked with mine, filled with cold fury. "You'll regret this, Helena," he said quietly. "When this is over, you'll have nothing." I met his gaze steadily. "I already had nothing, Ethan. A faithless husband, a fraudulent marriage. At least now I have my integrity." He lunged toward me, suddenly causing security to rush forward. "You think you're so clever, I'll destroy you in court. No one will believe you over me. I'll make sure you never work in this city again." The security officers grasped his arms, restraining him as he continued to shout threats. Samantha was led out separately, sobbing quietly. In the hallway, as Ethan was being escorted toward the elevator, he broke free briefly to confront me one last time. "This isn't over," he hissed. "You have no idea what you've done." I straightened my shoulders, feeling strangely calm in the face of his rage. "I know exactly what I've done, Ethan. I've chosen truth over comfort, integrity over security. Maybe for the first time in our marriage, I've chosen myself." As the elevator doors closed on his furious face, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The hardest part was over, but I knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. Still, for the first time in months, I could breathe freely again. 6 months after that fateful board meeting, I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, watching the summer sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. The space was smaller than our former home, a 2-bedroom condo in a converted warehouse downtown, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every decoration reflected my taste alone, not the compromise of a shared life. The divorce had been finalized last month, mercifully faster than I'd expected. Ethan had little leverage once the criminal investigation began. The prosecutor's office had offered him a deal in exchange for testimony against higher-ups at Global Tech who had been complicit in accepting the fraudulent numbers. He took it, of course. Ethan always looked out for himself first. I sipped my tea, scrolling through news updates on my tablet. The business section featured a small article about Samantha's sentencing yesterday. 18 months in a minimum security facility for her role in the fraud. She'd turned on Ethan in the end, claiming he had coerced her participation. The judge hadn't entirely believed her, but acknowledged she wasn't the mastermind. Ethan had received 5 years eligible for parole in 3. A relatively light sentence considering the scope of the fraud, but still enough to destroy the career he'd prioritized over everything else. The last time I saw him was in the courtroom, refusing to meet my eyes as he was led away. The scandal had rocked the advertising world. The Global Tech merger collapsed, of course. Maxwell Advertising survived, though, in a diminished form, with Gerald's son taking over operations after a thorough housecleaning of the executive team. I'd received a handwritten note from Gerald himself, thanking me for my courage in coming forward. My phone chimed with a text from Amanda, who had been promoted to senior accountant after the dust settled. "Still on for lunch tomorrow." I texted back my confirmation. Our unlikely alliance had blossomed into genuine friendship over the past months. She was dating Karen's brother now, a development that amused all of us. Professionally, I had landed on my feet, though not without challenges. Some former clients had drifted away uncomfortable with the publicity surrounding my name, but many had stayed, and new ones had come drawn by what one called my obvious integrity. I'd even developed a specialty in counseling victims of betrayal and fraud, using my own experience to help others heal. Last week, I'd received an unexpected letter from Ethan's mother. We'd always been close, and the divorce had strained, but not broken that bond. After months of silence, she'd written to apologize for initially blaming me for destroying her son's life. She'd come to recognize that he had destroyed it himself and thanked me for having the courage to stop him before he hurt more people. The letter had brought unexpected tears. There had been so many losses in this journey, so many relationships fractured. Each one had felt like another small death to mourn. But there had been rebirth, too. I'd joined a support group for divorced women finding solace and strength in their stories. I'd reconnected with friends I'd neglected during my marriage, rediscovering parts of myself that had been submerged in the role of Ethan's wife. I'd even started painting again, a passion I'd abandoned in college when Ethan had gently suggested it was a hobby, not a career. The healing hadn't been linear. There were still nights when I woke up reaching for someone who wasn't there, days when the anger returned so strongly it left me breathless. But those moments grew fewer as time passed. I'd learned that healing comes not from forgetting the wound, but from honoring it. From recognizing that surviving betrayal hadn't made me weaker, but stronger. Not naive, but wiser. Not broken, but more authentically whole. My therapist had suggested I write down my experience both for my own healing and potentially to help others. At first, I'd resisted not wanting to relive the pain, but gradually the idea had taken root. Last month, I'd signed a contract with a small publisher for a book combining my personal story with professional insights on recovering from betrayal. The working title was "The Door I Had to Open Finding Truth After Betrayal." The first draft was due in 3 months. Each night, I sat at my computer, pouring my journey onto the page, transforming pain into purpose. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, desperately trying to salvage a marriage that had already died, clinging to an image of a man who had never truly existed. I wished I could reach back through time and tell her that although the path ahead would be painful, she would not only survive, but thrive. Sometimes the most painful doors we open are the ones that finally set us free. My marriage hadn't been a failure, but a lesson. My betrayal hadn't been an ending, but a beginning. In losing what I thought I wanted, I had found what I truly needed: myself. I took a deep breath of the evening air, feeling gratitude wash over me. For my strength, for my friends, for the painful truth that had ultimately liberated me, for the woman I was becoming day by day, choice by choice. Life would never be perfect. There would be more challenges, more doors to open, more truths to face. But I would face them as Helena, not as an extension of someone else. And in that knowledge, I had found a peace that no betrayal could ever take away. Have you ever had to confront a painful truth that ultimately set you free? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if my story resonated with you. Subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and share with someone who might need to find the courage to open their own difficult door. Thank you for walking this path with me today. And remember that sometimes our deepest wounds become our greatest source of strength.